You stand at the edge of a shallow valley. The morning mist hangs low over water that mirrors the sky. In this flooded landscape, something extraordinary is growing. Slender green stalks rise from the water's surface, swaying gently in the breeze. They seem fragile, delicate, almost decorative. But within each stalk, within the drooping heads now forming at their tips, lies a grain that will change everything. This is rice. And it will feed more people, for more generations, across more centuries, than any other crop in human history. It will enable the rise of vast civilizations, support populations in the billions, shape cultures, religions, languages, and ways of life. But right now, in this quiet moment, it is simply a plant, growing in water, waiting to be understood. The wild beginning. 10,000 years ago, perhaps more, the first rice grew wild. Not in tidy rows, not in carefully managed fields, but along river banks and in marshy lowlands across southern China and northern India. It was an unassuming grass, one among thousands. Its seeds were small, encased in tough husks, difficult to harvest and harder still to process. Most people ignored it. There were easier foods to gather. Fruits that required no preparation. Tubers that could be roasted. Fish that swam in the same waters where the rice grew. But someone noticed. Someone saw that when the floodwaters receded, when the seasonal rains passed, this particular grass produced seeds in abundance. More than most plants. And those seeds, once you figured out how to remove the husk, were filling, nutritious, worth the effort. The gathering began casually. You would wade into the shallow water at the right time of year, when the seed heads were heavy and golden. You would strip the seeds by hand, collecting them in woven baskets. It was slow work. Your fingers grew sore. But you returned year after year to the same places. The same stands of wild rice. And over time, you began to notice patterns. The rice grew best where water pooled but did not stagnate. Where the soil was soft and rich. Where there was sun but not too much heat. You began to understand its needs. And perhaps by accident, perhaps by design, you began to help it. You cleared competing plants. You guided water toward the rice patches. You created conditions where it would thrive. And the rice responded. It grew taller. Produced more seeds. Became easier to harvest. This was not yet farming. Not deliberate cultivation. But it was the beginning. The relationship forming between human and plant. You were learning from the rice. And the rice, through the unconscious process of natural selection, was learning from you. The plants that produced more seeds, that held on to their seeds just long enough for you to harvest them before they fell, these were the ones that survived. That spread. That became the ancestors of all the rice that would follow. Evolution and human intention were beginning to intertwine. And neither would ever be the same. The flooded revelation. The breakthrough came when someone understood water. Not just that rice grew near water, but that it grew better in water. That flooding could be controlled, managed, used as a tool. Perhaps it happened in a river valley where seasonal floods were predictable, where the water rose and fell with the monsoon rains. You watched the wild rice flourish in the flooded zones. You noticed that weeds struggled to compete there, that the standing water suppressed the growth of other plants while the rice thrived. And you had an idea. What if you could create those conditions deliberately? What if you could capture water, hold it, release it when needed? You began to experiment, building small earthen barriers to trap rainwater, digging shallow channels to guide it, creating the first crude paddies. The results were remarkable. In the flooded fields, rice grew with less competition. The water warmed in the sun, creating an environment that was almost tropical, even in temperate climates. The rice plants loved it. They produced more tillers, more stems, more seed heads. And when harvest came, the yield was astonishing. Far more than you could gather from wild stands. Enough to store. Enough to feed your family through the dry season. Enough to share. You had stumbled upon one of the most productive agricultural systems ever devised by humans. The paddy field. And it would change the world. But creating and maintaining paddies was labor-intensive. You needed to build and repair the bunds, the earthen walls that held the water. You needed to level the fields precisely so the water depth was uniform. Too deep and young plants drowned. Too shallow and they dried out. You needed to manage the water supply, bringing it in at the right times, draining it at others. You needed to transplant seedlings by hand, one by one, bend over in the mud for hours or days. It was backbreaking work. Your legs ached. Your back screamed. But the harvest made it worthwhile. Rice cultivation was demanding, yes, but it was also reliable, predictable, and incredibly productive. A single acre of well-managed paddy could produce far more food than the same area of wheat or barley fields. And so you kept doing it, refining the techniques, building more paddies, expanding into new valleys. The cultivation of patience. Rice farming teaches patience in ways few other crops do. From planting to harvest takes months. 4, 5, sometimes 6 months depending on the variety and climate. You cannot rush it. Cannot force it. You must work with the seasons, with the water, with the plant's own rhythms. First comes the nursery bed. You sow seeds densely in a small, carefully prepared plot. The seedlings emerge, thin and delicate. You tend them for weeks, keeping the water level just right, protecting them from birds and insects. This is where you learn patience, where you resist the urge to hurry. When the seedlings are ready, when they are strong enough, comes transplanting. You pull them gently from the nursery, roots trailing mud. You carry them in bundles to the main field, now flooded and waiting. And then you wade in. The water is warm, cloudy with disturbed soil. You bend forward, planting each seedling by hand. Press it into the soft mud. Ensure it is deep enough to anchor, shallow enough to breathe. One after another. Row after row. Your hands move with practiced rhythm. But there is no rushing. Each plant needs its moment of attention. Its proper placement. This is meditation in motion. Your mind empties. There is only the next plant. The next step. The next breath. And then you wait. The seedlings look forlorn at first, stressed by transplanting. But within days they recover. They send out new roots, new leaves. They begin to tiller, sending up additional stems. The field transforms from bare mud with scattered shoots to a carpet of green. You maintain the water level. You weed, though less than in dry fields because the water suppresses many weeds. You watch for pests, for disease. You make small adjustments. But mostly you wait. And in that waiting, something happens. You become attuned to the field. You notice when the color changes slightly, indicating nitrogen deficiency. When the plants tilt, suggesting uneven water depth. When the ducks behave differently, perhaps sensing an insect outbreak. You develop an intimacy with the crop that goes beyond knowledge. It is feeling. Instinct. The kind of understanding that can only come from patient observation over many seasons. As the rice matures, as the seed heads form and begin to fill, the field changes again. The green takes on golden tones. The stalks bend under the weight of grain. The water is drained, allowing the soil to firm up before harvest. And finally, months after you first planted those tiny seedlings, you return with sickle or blade. You cut the stalks. Bundle them. The grain must dry before threshing. More patience. More waiting. But when you finally thresh the rice, when you separate grain from stalk, when you winnow away the chaff and collect the clean seed, the satisfaction is profound. This is not just food. This is time made tangible. Patience rewarded. The seasons compressed into a basket of grain. The architecture of water. As rice cultivation spreads, the landscape transforms. Entire hillsides are carved into terraces, creating stepped fields that follow the contours of the land. This is engineering on a massive scale, accomplished with simple tools and enormous labor. The terraces must be level, each one a precise platform where water can pool evenly. The bunds must be strong, capable of holding back thousands of gallons of water. The channels that bring water from streams or springs must be carefully graded so the water flows but does not erode. Building these systems takes years, sometimes generations. But once built, they last for centuries. In some parts of Asia, rice terraces constructed 1,000 years ago are still farmed today. Still productive. Still beautiful in their precise, mathematical arrangement. Water management becomes a science. You learn to read the sky, to predict the monsoon rains. You learn to conserve water during dry spells, rationing it among fields according to complex agreements. You learn to rotate flooding, giving some fields rest while others grow. You develop systems of gates and channels that allow one person to control water flow across many paddies. These systems are not written down, not at first. They are taught, passed from parent to child, from master to apprentice. They are embedded in practice, in muscle memory, in the collective knowledge of the community. Because rice farming is never an individual endeavor. It is communal. The terraces on the hillside above affect the fields below. Water used upstream is not available downstream. Bunds that fail can flood neighbors' crops. So cooperation is essential. You develop customs, rules, shared labor practices. You help build and maintain each other's bunds. You participate in communal water management. You coordinate planting and harvesting. This cooperation creates social structures. In many rice-growing societies, the management of water and fields becomes the basis for governance. Village elders or elected committees oversee the irrigation systems. They mediate disputes. They organize communal labor for large projects. Rice farming, more than almost any other agricultural system, requires and reinforces social cohesion. You cannot be a successful rice farmer alone. You need the village. And the village needs you. This interdependence shapes culture, It encourages values of cooperation, consensus, long-term thinking. It creates societies where individual achievement is valued but collective well-being is paramount. Where the health of the system, the fields, the water, the community, matters more than any one person's gain. The gift of abundance. Rice is extraordinarily productive. A well-managed paddy can yield more calories per acre than almost any other staple crop. This is because rice is efficient. It converts sunlight and nutrients into edible grain with remarkable effectiveness. The flooded conditions reduce many pests and diseases. The water itself provides nutrients as organic matter decays. The rice plant uses every advantage, growing quickly during the warm, wet season, packing its seeds with starch. The result is abundance. Surplus. More than enough to eat. And surplus changes everything. With reliable food surpluses, populations can grow. Villages become towns. Towns become cities. Because not everyone needs to farm. Some people can specialize. Can become craftspeople, traders, priests, scholars, soldiers. The surplus grain feeds them. And they, in turn, contribute to the society in other ways. They make tools that improve farming. They organize trade that brings in resources not available locally. They create art, music, literature. They develop writing systems to keep records of harvests and distributions. Civilization, in the most literal sense, becomes possible. The great cultures of Asia, Chinese, Japanese, Korean, Vietnamese, Thai, Indonesian, Indian, are all built on foundations of rice. The crop creates the surplus that allows complexity to flourish. But abundance also creates challenges. How do you store vast quantities of grain? How do you prevent spoilage, pests, theft? You develop granaries, raised structures with ventilation to keep the rice dry. You develop processing techniques, ways to remove the husk that protects the grain but also makes it less digestible. You develop trade networks to move surplus rice from productive regions to less fertile areas or to cities. You develop systems of taxation, where a portion of each harvest goes to the central authority in exchange for protection, infrastructure, administration. Rice becomes not just food but currency, a measure of wealth, a tool of power. Those who control the rice supply control the society. And so politics becomes intertwined with agriculture. The management of rice production and distribution is not just practical. It is statecraft. The abundance also allows for cultural development. With food security comes time. Time to think, to create, to contemplate. The great philosophical and religious traditions of Asia emerge in rice-growing societies. Buddhism spreads along rice trade routes. Confucianism develops in the agricultural heartland of China. Hinduism flourishes in the rice-growing regions of India. These traditions are not separate from rice cultivation. They are enabled by it. The surplus creates the space for spiritual inquiry. And in turn, the spiritual traditions shape how rice is grown and shared. They emphasize balance, harmony with nature, the cycles of life and death. They create rituals around planting and harvest. They sanctify the work. Make it meaningful beyond the mere production of food. The thousand varieties. Rice is not one thing. It is thousands of things. Over millennia of cultivation across diverse environments, rice has diversified into an astonishing array of varieties. There are rices that grow in deep water, floating as the flood rises. There are rices for upland conditions, grown without flooding in mountain valleys. There are rices that mature in 3 months and others that take 7. There are rices with long, slender grains and others with short, round grains. White rice, black rice, red rice, sticky rice, fragrant rice, each with its own characteristics, its own uses, its own cultural significance. Farmers become curators of this diversity. You save seeds from plants that perform well in your specific conditions. You trade seeds with neighbors, with travelers, always seeking varieties that might work better, that might resist a particular pest, that might tolerate drought or flood, that might taste better or store longer. Over generations, you develop varieties perfectly adapted to your microclimate, your soil, your water supply. These are not commercial cultivars bred in laboratories. They are landraces, shaped by countless small selections over countless seasons. Each one carries the accumulated wisdom of the farmers who developed it. Each one is a genetic library of adaptations. And collectively, they represent an irreplaceable reservoir of agricultural biodiversity. Different varieties serve different purposes. Some rices are for everyday eating, sustaining and filling. Others are for special occasions, festivals, offerings to ancestors or deities. Some are for brewing into wine or beer. Some are ground into flour for cakes and noodles. Some are fed to animals. Some are used for thatching roofs. Every part of the rice plant has a use. The straw becomes fodder, fuel, building material, rope. The husks are burned for heat or mixed into animal feed. The bran, removed during milling, contains oils and nutrients. Nothing is wasted. The rice plant, through centuries of human partnership, has become a source of multiple products. A complete resource. The names of rice varieties are poetry. In Thailand, you have jasmine rice, fragrant and delicate. In Japan, kasha hikari, prized for sushi. In India, basmati, aged to develop its nutty aroma. In Indonesia, pandan wangi, with its distinctive flavor. Each name tells a story, references a place, a quality, a memory. The naming of rice varieties is an act of relationship, of recognition. You do not just grow rice. You grow dragon's eye, or mountain mist, or empress's tears. You know each variety's personality, its strengths and weaknesses, its preferences. And you match variety to field, to season, to purpose. This is the art of rice farming. Not just following a procedure, but orchestrating a complex interaction between plant, place, and human intention. The daily bread. In societies where rice is the staple, it becomes more than food. It becomes identity. The word for rice is often the same as the word for meal, or even for life itself. To eat is to eat rice. Other foods are accompaniments, flavors to make the rice interesting. But rice is the foundation, the substance. Children are raised on rice porridge, soft and digestible. Workers carry rice for their midday meal. Celebrations feature special rice dishes. Even the spirits of ancestors are offered rice. The preparation of rice is a skill passed down with care. How much water to add? How long to soak? How to heat it? When to cover it? When to let it rest? Every family has its preferences. Some like rice soft and sticky. Others prefer it firm with separate grains. The texture, the moisture content, these are matters of deep personal preference. And everyone has opinions. The rice your grandmother made is the standard against which all other rice is measured. The rice of your home region is superior to rice from elsewhere. These are not trivial matters. Rice is comfort, memory, belonging. The rhythm of the day is marked by rice. Morning rice is lighter, perhaps mixed with tea. Midday rice sustains labor. Evening rice is the main meal, where the family gathers. You sit together, often in silence at first, focusing on the bowl before you. The rice is perfect, or it is not. If it is too dry, someone forgot to check it. If it is mushy, the timing was wrong. The quality of the rice reflects on the cook, on the household. It is a matter of pride. And so attention is paid. To the cooking, yes, but also to the eating. You do not rush. You appreciate. You consume mindfully because this rice represents months of labor. Your own or someone else's. The farmer who grew it. The miller who processed it. The merchant who transported it. Everyone who participated in bringing this grain to your bowl. There is reverence in this. Not religious necessarily, but a recognition of interconnection, of the web of effort that sustains life. The spreading cultivation. From its origins in Asia, rice begins to travel, carried by migrants and traders along ancient routes. It reaches Korea and Japan, where it becomes central to the culture. It spreads south and east through Southeast Asia, where the climate is ideal. It crosses mountains into the Himalayan valleys. It reaches the Middle East, where it is adopted and adapted. And eventually it crosses oceans. Arab traders bring rice to East Africa. European colonizers carry it to the Americas, to the Caribbean, to Brazil, to the southern United States. Enslaved Africans, some from rice-growing regions of West Africa, bring their knowledge and are forced to apply it in new lands. Rice cultivation becomes global. But rice does not simply transplant. It must be adapted. The varieties from tropical Asia do not always work in subtropical or temperate zones. The monsoon patterns are different. The day length, the temperature, the soil, all vary. And so each new region develops its own rice culture, its own varieties, its own techniques. In Japan, rice farming becomes an art form, refined over centuries. The terraces are immaculate. The water management is precise. The rice is treated with reverence. In the American South, rice plantations are established, using enslaved labor and irrigation systems drawn from African and Asian knowledge. In West Africa, where rice has been grown independently for thousands of years, African rice species continue to thrive alongside Asian varieties. Each region writes its own chapter in the rice story. But the core truth remains. Rice is life. Rice is sustenance. Rice is the grain that allows civilization to flourish. The spread of rice is also a story of power. Colonial powers see rice as a strategic crop, a way to feed armies and workers. They promote rice cultivation in their colonies. They establish plantations. They impose systems of production and taxation that enrich the colonizers while impoverishing the farmers. In many places, rice becomes a crop of exploitation, grown by subjugated people for export to distant markets. The farmers who grow it are often hungry themselves. This is the bitter irony of colonial agriculture. The land produces abundance, but the producers do not benefit. The rice flows out, and wealth flows to the centers of empire. This pattern persists even after colonialism formally ends. Global trade in rice continues to favor the powerful. Small farmers struggle to compete with industrial operations. The gift of abundance becomes entangled with systems of inequality. The science of selection. For most of history, rice breeding is an art. Farmers select the best plants, save the best seeds, trade for promising varieties. The process is intuitive, based on observation and experience. But in the 20th century, science enters the picture. Researchers begin to study rice systematically, to understand its genetics, to cross varieties deliberately, creating hybrids with desired traits. The green revolution of the 1960s and 70s brings high-yielding rice varieties to Asia. These new varieties, developed at research institutes like the International Rice Research Institute in the Philippines, produce more grain per plant. They respond well to fertilizers. They mature quickly, allowing multiple harvests per year in some climates. They promise to end hunger, to feed the rapidly growing populations of Asia. And they do increase production dramatically. Countries that once imported rice become self-sufficient, or even exporters. The new varieties spread rapidly. Farmers adopt them eagerly, drawn by the promise of higher yields and incomes. But the green revolution is not an unmixed blessing. The high-yielding varieties require inputs that traditional varieties do not. Chemical fertilizers, pesticides, reliable irrigation. These cost money. Small farmers often go into debt to purchase them. And if the harvest fails, if drought or pests strike, they have no buffer. The diversity of local varieties, accumulated over generations, is abandoned in favor of a few high-yielding types. This makes the system vulnerable. If a pest or disease emerges that affects the popular varieties, entire regions can be devastated. The environmental costs are also significant. The heavy use of fertilizers pollutes waterways, causes algal blooms, depletes soil health over time. Pesticides kill not just pests but beneficial insects, birds, fish. The monocultures of single varieties create landscapes that are biologically impoverished. And the increased production leads to increased consumption. Not just of rice, but of the inputs needed to grow it. Fossil fuels for machinery, electricity for irrigation pumps. The industrial rice system, while productive, is also fragile and unsustainable in its current form. This is the paradox of modern agriculture. We have learned to produce more than ever before. But we have done so in ways that undermine the long-term health of the systems we depend on. Yet science also offers hope. Researchers are now working to develop rice varieties that need less water, that tolerate salt or drought, that resist pests without chemicals, that provide more nutrition. Golden rice, genetically modified to produce vitamin A, could prevent blindness in millions of children. Flood-tolerant varieties allow farming in areas previously too risky. Nitrogen-efficient varieties reduce the need for fertilizer. The science of rice breeding is advancing rapidly. And unlike the Green Revolution, which focused narrowly on yield, modern efforts are broader. They consider sustainability, resilience, nutrition, farmer autonomy. The goal is not just more rice, but better rice. Rice that supports both human and environmental health. Rice that can adapt to a changing climate. Rice that empowers rather than impoverishes those who grow it. The culture of rice. Rice is not just agriculture. It is culture. In Japan, the emperor traditionally plants rice each spring in a ceremonial field. In Thailand, the royal plowing ceremony marks the beginning of the rice season, with Brahmin priests and sacred oxen participating. In Bali, rice terraces are managed by water temple systems, where irrigation decisions are made through religious consensus. Rice is sacred. It is a gift from the gods. In Hindu tradition, rice is associated with Lakshmi, goddess of prosperity. In Buddhism, offering rice to monks is an act of merit. In many cultures, spilling rice is considered bad luck. Wasting it is a sin. These beliefs reflect the centrality of rice to survival. To waste rice is to waste life itself. Festivals revolve around rice. Planting festivals ask for good weather and abundant harvests. Harvest festivals give thanks. First fruits are offered to ancestors, to spirits, to deities before humans partake. These rituals are not superstition. They are the community's way of marking the significance of the cycle, of recognizing dependence on forces beyond human control. Weather, water, the mysterious process by which a tiny seed becomes a plant heavy with grain. The rituals create meaning. They bind the community together in shared purpose. And they transmit knowledge. The timing of the ceremonies encodes agricultural wisdom. Plant after this festival. Harvest before that one. The ritual calendar is also a farming calendar. Art and literature are suffused with rice imagery. Poems celebrate the green of rice fields. Paintings depict farmers at work in paddies. Songs mark the stages of the growing season. Children's games mimic rice planting and harvesting. Proverbs draw lessons from rice farming. Bend like rice in the wind. The rice that stands tallest is cut first. The metaphors shape how people think about virtue, about society, about life itself. Rice is not just what you eat. It is how you understand the world. The patience required to grow it becomes a virtue. The cooperation needed to manage water becomes a social principle. The cycles of growth and harvest become a model for understanding time, change, human life. You are born, you grow, you bear fruit, you return to the earth. Like rice. The plant and the person mirror each other. The labor of love. Behind every bowl of rice is labor. Immense labor. The fields must be prepared, plowed and puddled and leveled. The seedlings must be grown, transplanted, tended. The water must be managed constantly. The weeding, though reduced in flooded fields, is still necessary. The harvest is done by hand in many places, each stalk cut individually. The sheaves must be dried, threshed, winnowed. The grain must be milled to remove the husk, then often polished to remove the bran. Every step requires human hands, human backs, human time. In traditional rice farming, a single acre might require hundreds of hours of labor. It is the most labor-intensive grain crop in the world. This labor is often performed by women. In many rice-growing societies, women do the transplanting. They are thought to have a gentler touch, a connection to fertility. They wade into the flooded fields, bent double, placing seedlings with care. It is hard work. painful work. But it is also social. Women work together, often singing to pass the time, to coordinate their movements, to make the work bearable. These work songs are a form of culture. They tell stories, share news, comment on social issues. They are entertainment and communication and coping mechanism all at once. And through them, women's voices enter the public sphere. In the fields, there is a kind of equality. Everyone is bent to the same task. Everyone is tired. Everyone is necessary. The labor builds families and communities. During transplanting and harvest, neighbors help each other. You work my field today, I work yours tomorrow. This reciprocal labor is formalized in many cultures. It is expected, obligatory, and it creates bonds. You know your neighbors intimately. You have worked beside them in the mud, shared meals during breaks, celebrated together when the work is done. This is social capital. Trust built through shared effort. And it is what allows the community to function, to respond to crisis, to care for those who cannot care for themselves. The rice field is not just a place of production. It is a place of social reproduction, where the bonds that hold society together are created and renewed. The plate before you. The rice on your plate, if you eat rice, comes from this long history. It is the descendant of wild grasses first gathered in ancient valleys. It has been selected, cultivated, improved over 10,000 years. It has traveled across continents. It has been grown by millions of farmers, each adding their small innovations to the accumulated knowledge. It has survived droughts and floods, pests and diseases, wars and famines. It has been the foundation of empires and the sustenance of the poor. It has been fought over, taxed, traded, hoarded, shared. And now it is here, before you, ordinary and miraculous. When you eat rice, you are participating in this history. You are connected to the farmer who grew it, even if you will never meet them, to the systems that transported it, to the culture that shaped your preference for this particular type, this particular preparation. Every bite is an act of relationship. You are being sustained by the earth, by water, by sun, by human labor. And this is true of all food, of course. But rice, more than most foods, makes this connection visible. Because rice is not hidden. It is not highly processed into something unrecognizable. It is a grain. Simple. Direct. You can see what it is. And in seeing, you can remember, can appreciate, can feel the weight of all that has brought this food to you. This awareness can change how you eat, can make you slower, more mindful, can make you grateful, not in a performative way, but in a genuine recognition of dependence. You did not grow this rice. You did not flood the field or transplant the seedlings or cut the stalks or thresh the grain. Someone else did. Many someone else's. And their work has given you life, given you energy, given you the ability to do whatever you will do today. That is worth acknowledging, worth honoring. Not with elaborate ritual, though ritual has its place, but with simple attention, with not wasting, with choosing rice that was grown in ways that respect the farmer and the land, with supporting systems that distribute the abundance more justly, with recognizing that food is not a commodity to be consumed thoughtlessly. It is a gift, one that requires responsibility from the recipient. The challenge is ahead. Rice faces an uncertain future. Climate change is altering the patterns of rainfall that rice depends on. Monsoons are becoming less predictable. Droughts more severe. Floods more destructive. Rising temperatures affect rice flowering and grain filling. Rising sea levels threaten coastal rice lands with saltwater intrusion. And rice cultivation itself contributes to climate change. Flooded rice paddies produce methane, a potent greenhouse gas. The decomposition of organic matter in the oxygen-free environment of the paddy releases it into the atmosphere. Rice is responsible for a significant percentage of global methane emissions. This is a bitter irony. The crop that feeds billions is also contributing to the warming that threatens its own production. Water scarcity is another challenge. Rice is a water-intensive crop. A kilogram of rice requires thousands of liters of water to produce. In regions where water is becoming scarce, where rivers are drying up and aquifers are depleting, rice farming is under pressure. Some areas are switching to less water-intensive crops. Others are developing new techniques. Alternate wetting and drying, where fields are flooded and then allowed to dry partially before reflooding. This saves water and reduces methane emissions. But it requires careful management. And not all farmers have the knowledge or resources to implement it. The challenge is to maintain production while reducing environmental impact, and to do so in a way that does not further burden small farmers who are already struggling. Population growth adds pressure. The world population is expected to reach nearly 10 billion by mid-century. Many of those people will depend on rice. Demand is rising. But the area suitable for rice cultivation is limited. Expansion into new lands often means destroying forests or wetlands, converting ecosystems that provide other essential services. The answer must be to produce more on existing land, to increase yields without increasing environmental harm. This requires innovation, better varieties, better practices, better policies. It requires investment in research, in extension services that teach farmers, in infrastructure that supports sustainable agriculture. And it requires a shift in thinking, from maximizing short-term yields to ensuring long-term sustainability, from treating rice as a commodity to valuing it as the life-sustaining resource it is. The wisdom of water. The most important lesson rice teaches is about water. Rice farming is water management. It is understanding that water is not a resource to be used but a system to be managed. That water connects everything. What you do upstream affects those downstream. What you take today affects what is available tomorrow. Rice farmers have understood this for millennia. They have developed sophisticated systems of water sharing, of conservation, of ensuring that the resource is used efficiently and equitably. This wisdom is needed now more than ever, as fresh water becomes scarcer globally. As competition for water intensifies between agriculture, industry, and cities. As climate change alters where and when water is available. The rice paddy is a model. It captures water during the monsoon, holds it, allows it to percolate slowly into the soil, recharging groundwater, releases it gradually. The system works with natural cycles rather than against them, and it creates multiple benefits. The flooded fields provide habitat for fish, frogs, insects. They are biodiversity hotspots. They are beautiful. They reflect the sky and create landscapes that inspire art and poetry. They are not just production systems. They are ecosystems. And treating them as such, valuing them for all they provide rather than just the rice they produce, is essential. Because if we manage only for yield, we destroy the system. But if we manage for system health, yield follows. Along with water quality, biodiversity, climate regulation, resilience, all the things that make life possible and good. This holistic understanding is what traditional rice farming embodies. It is what industrial agriculture has lost. And it is what must be recovered. Not by returning to the past. Not by rejecting science or technology. But by integrating old wisdom with new knowledge. By designing systems that are productive and sustainable. That feed people and heal the land. That honor the labor of farmers and ensure they can make a dignified living. This is possible. It is being done in pockets around the world. Organic rice farming, agroecological approaches, systems that combine rice with fish or ducks, practices that build soil health and reduce the need for external inputs. The knowledge exists. What is lacking is the will to scale it up, to value long-term health over short-term profit, to support farmers in transitioning, to create markets that reward sustainable production. These are choices. Choices that societies, governments, consumers can make. And the choices matter. They determine whether rice can continue to feed billions. Whether the landscapes that grow it remain healthy and beautiful. Whether the culture and community that rice sustains can endure. The gift and the responsibility. Rice is a gift. Not in the sense that it was given to humans by some benevolent force, but in the sense that through a long partnership, a coevolution, this plant and this species have shaped each other. Rice has given humans food security, enabled population growth, supported the development of complex societies, and humans have given rice care, spread it across the world, diversified it into thousands of varieties, protected it from extinction. This is mutualism, reciprocity, and it continues. Every time a farmer plants rice, the relationship is renewed. Every time someone eats rice and is sustained, the gift is received. But gifts create obligations. If you accept a gift, you must honor it, must not waste it, must pass it on. This is the responsibility that comes with eating rice. To recognize its value, to support those who grow it, to protect the systems that produce it, to ensure it remains available for future generations. This is not abstract. It is concrete. It means making choices. Choosing rice that is grown sustainably when possible. Reducing food waste, because every grain wasted is labor and resources squandered. Supporting policies that protect small farmers and encourage sustainable practices. Learning about where your food comes from. Teaching children about it. Maintaining the connection between consumption and production. Between the plate and the field. In an age of disconnection, where food appears magically on supermarket shelves, this connection is radical. It is resistance to the amnesia that industrial food systems encourage. It is remembering the diversity under threat. In the gene banks and research centers around the world, thousands of rice varieties are preserved. Seeds stored in cold rooms. genetic material frozen, a library of diversity. But the living diversity, the diversity in farmers' fields, is shrinking. When a farmer abandons a traditional variety for a high-yielding modern one, when a landrace disappears from cultivation, something irreplaceable is lost. Not just the genetic material, though that is important, but the knowledge. The grandmother who knew exactly when to plant that variety. The uncle who understood how to manage its quirks. The songs sung during its harvest. The dishes prepared from it. This knowledge cannot be stored in gene banks. It lives only in practice, in communities. And when the practice stops, the knowledge fades. Within a generation or two, it is gone. Some farmers are resisting this loss. They maintain traditional varieties alongside modern ones. They save seeds. They share them. They are curators of diversity, though they might not use that term. They do it because they love the taste. Because their grandparents grew these varieties. Because they understand that resilience requires diversity. That having multiple options protects against the unexpected. These farmers are heroes. Not in a dramatic sense, but in the quiet, persistent way of anyone who swims against the current. Who maintains something valuable when the pressure is to abandon it. They receive little recognition, little support. Often they are told they are backwards, that they should modernize. But they persist. And their persistence maintains options. For themselves, for their communities, for humanity. Organizations are beginning to recognize this. To support farmer seed networks. To document traditional knowledge before it is lost. To create markets for heritage varieties. To celebrate the diversity that farmers have created. This is important work. But it is a race against time. Every year, more varieties disappear. More knowledge is lost. The urgency is real. And the solution requires more than preservation. It requires active cultivation. It requires consumers who seek out diverse varieties. Who are willing to pay a premium for heritage rice. Who value taste and story and sustainability over mere convenience. It requires chefs who feature these varieties. Who tell their stories. Who make them desirable. It requires a shift in what we value. From uniformity to diversity. From efficiency to resilience. From forgetting to remembering. The ritual of preparation. In many households, the preparation of rice is a daily meditation. A moment of care in a busy day. You measure the rice into a pot. You rinse it, watching the water cloud with starch. Once, twice, 3 times, until the water runs almost clear. You add fresh water. The ratio is important. Too much and the rice is mushy. Too little and it burns. You have learned the ratio in your bones. Learned it from watching, from doing, from occasional failures that taught adjustment. You bring the water to a boil. Then you reduce the heat. Cover the pot. And you wait. No peeking. No stirring. The rice is cooking, steaming in its own moisture. Transforming from hard dry grains into soft, fluffy sustenance. And you trust the process. This is faith. Not religious faith, but practical faith. The confidence that if you follow the steps, the rice will turn out. That order produces results. That patience is rewarded. When the rice is done, when you remove the lid and see the perfectly cooked grains, there is satisfaction. You fluff it with a wooden paddle. You taste a bite, judge the texture, and then you serve it. Perhaps into bowls for the family. Perhaps onto plates alongside other dishes. And there is pride in this. The rice is good. Your effort has produced something necessary and nourishing. This small accomplishment, repeated daily, is the foundation of life. It is unglamorous, unremarkable, and utterly essential. The rice eaters do not thank you every time. It is assumed, expected. But you know what you have done. You have taken a raw material and made it ready. You have performed an act of care, of service, of love, if we understand love as the daily work of sustaining those we are connected to. In some traditions, the rice cooker has replaced the pot. A machine that automates the process. That guarantees consistent results. Some mourn this. See it as a loss of skill, of connection. Others embrace it. See it as freedom. Time saved for other things. Both views have merit. Technology changes practice. But the core remains. Someone still measures the rice. Adds the water. Presses the button. Waits. The machine does not eliminate care. It changes its form. And however rice is cooked, in a pot over fire or in an electric cooker, the result is the same. The transformation of grain into food. The daily miracle that sustains billions. The stories in a grain. Every variety of rice has a story. How it came to be. Where it is grown. Who grows it. What it is used for. Some stories are mythic. Golden rice sent by the gods. Red rice stained by the blood of a sacred being. Black rice reserved for emperors, forbidden to commoners. These stories encode values. They make the varieties special, precious. They give cultivation meaning beyond mere production. Other stories are practical. This variety was developed in the 1970s by crossing two parents. It is drought tolerant. It is popular in upland areas where irrigation is not available. These stories are less romantic but equally important. They tell of human ingenuity, of the work of breeders and researchers, of farmers' choices and adaptations. Some rice stories are tragic. Varieties lost in war. Fields destroyed. Seed stores burned. The knowledge holders killed or displaced. The rice culture disrupted so severely it cannot recover. The history of the 20th century includes many such losses. And they continue. Every conflict that disrupts farming. Every climate disaster that destroys seed stocks. Every economic pressure that forces farmers to abandon diversity. These are losses not just for those immediately affected. They are losses for all of us. Because diversity is our collective inheritance, our shared resource. And once lost, it cannot be recreated. Not exactly. New varieties can be bred. But the particular combination of traits, the adaptation to specific conditions, the cultural meaning attached to a landrace, these are unique, irreplaceable. But some stories are hopeful. Varieties thought lost but rediscovered, growing in a remote valley, maintained by an elderly farmer, collected just in time, multiplied, shared, restored to cultivation. These rediscoveries are celebrated. They feel like resurrections, and they remind us that persistence is possible. that not everything is lost, that even in difficult circumstances, people maintain what they value. Pass it on. The seeds saved through war and famine. The knowledge transmitted despite persecution. The practice maintained in secret when it is forbidden. These acts of preservation are forms of resistance. They say, "This matters. This will not be forgotten. This will continue." And because of them, it does. The flavor of place. Rice tastes different depending on where it is grown. The soil, the water, the climate, all influence flavor. Rice from volcanic soils has a different character than rice from river deltas. Rice grown at high altitude tastes different from lowland rice. And the variety matters too. Jasmine rice is fragrant, floral. Basmati is nutty, aromatic. Short-grain Japanese rice is sweet, sticky. Long-grain indica rice is firm, separate. These differences are not just chemical. They are cultural, aesthetic. You grow up eating a certain kind of rice and it becomes your standard, your preference. Rice from other regions tastes foreign. Interesting perhaps, but not quite right. Not home. This is terroir, the flavor of place. Usually associated with wine, but true of rice as well. And it is valuable. It differentiates rice from different regions, creates identity, pride. The rice from our valley is the best. You can taste the mountain water in it. This may or may not be literally true, but it is true in meaning. The rice carries the place. When you eat it, you taste not just the grain but the landscape, the care of the farmers who grew it, the tradition of cultivation. This is what is lost in industrial agriculture, where rice from different regions is mixed and sold as generic, where the only distinction is between long grain and short grain, white and brown. The flavor of place is erased, and with it, the connection to source. The rice becomes anonymous, interchangeable, and we are all poorer for it. Preserving the flavor of place requires different systems. Local markets where farmers can sell directly. Labels that identify origin. Consumers who care and are willing to pay for specificity. Chefs who feature regional varieties. Who tell the story on the menu. This is beginning to happen. Slowly. In pockets. But it shows what is possible. A food system where diversity is valued. Where eaters are connected to growers. Where rice is not a commodity but a product of place and people. This system is not about returning to some imagined past. It is about moving toward a different future. One that honors both tradition and innovation. That uses technology to enhance rather than erase diversity. That distributes benefits more equitably. That sustains both land and people. This is the rice economy we need. And it is being built bowl by bowl, field by field, choice by choice. The children in the paddies. In rice-growing regions, children grow up surrounded by paddies. They play in the water during transplanting season. They learn to identify growth stages. They help with small tasks, scaring birds away, gleaning fallen grains after harvest. Rice farming is part of their childhood, part of their education in how the world works. They see the seasons change. They understand that food does not come from stores but from soil and water and labor. This grounding is valuable. It creates connection. Respect for the work of growing food. appreciation for those who do it. But it is also hard. The work is difficult. The income often meager. Many children dream of leaving, of going to cities, of lives that do not involve mud and mosquitoes and backbreaking labor. This tension is real and difficult. How do you honor the work while acknowledging its difficulty? How do you pass on the knowledge without pressuring children to farm when they want different lives? Some communities are finding ways, making farming more viable economically, introducing technologies that reduce the hardest labor, creating opportunities for young people to farm in new ways, organic certification that brings premium prices, direct marketing through cooperatives, agritourism where visitors pay to experience rice farming. These innovations can make farming more attractive, more sustainable as a livelihood. But they require support, investment, access to markets, things that small farmers often lack. And some children do choose to stay, or to return after time away. They bring new perspectives. They combine traditional knowledge with modern techniques. They experiment. They innovate. They document their work on social media, showing urban audiences what rice farming actually entails. They are proud of what they do, and their pride is changing how rice farming is perceived. Not as backwards, not as poverty, but as skilled, important, valuable work, as stewardship, as a way of life that offers connection and meaning that city jobs often lack. This shift in perception is crucial, because for rice farming to continue, for the knowledge and diversity to be maintained, there must be farmers. Young farmers. Farmers who choose the work not from lack of options but from genuine calling. From love of the land and the crop and the life. These farmers exist. They need to be supported, celebrated, given the resources to succeed, because they are the future of rice. And rice is the future of billions. The water commons. Water for rice is a commons, a shared resource that must be managed collectively. No one owns the river or the rain, but everyone depends on it. This creates both opportunity and challenge. Opportunity because when water is abundant and well managed, everyone benefits. Challenge because self-interest can lead to overuse, to competition, to conflict. Rice farmers have developed sophisticated systems to manage this. Water user associations, rotational systems, rules about when and how much water can be taken, enforcement mechanisms. These systems work not because of coercion but because of shared understanding. Everyone knows they depend on cooperation. That cheating, while it might bring short-term advantage, undermines the system that everyone relies on. So there is social pressure to follow the rules, to contribute to maintenance, to participate in decision-making. These water commons are models for resource management more broadly. They show that private property is not the only way to avoid the tragedy of the commons. That communities can self-organize, can create rules and norms that ensure sustainable use. This is important, because so much of the modern world is organized around privatization, around the belief that individual ownership leads to better management. But water cannot really be owned. Neither can air, or climate, or biodiversity. These are commons, and managing them requires the kind of collective action that rice farmers have practiced for millennia. learning from them, from how they negotiate and decide and enforce, could help address larger environmental challenges. The principles are the same: shared resources, long-term dependence, the need for cooperation, and the recognition that individual flourishing depends on collective well-being. But the water commons is under pressure. From groundwater pumping that lowers water tables, from dams that alter river flows, from climate change that makes rainfall less predictable, from urban and industrial growth that competes for water. In many regions, there is simply not enough water for everyone who needs it. And rice, being water-intensive, is often blamed, told it is unsustainable, that farmers must use less or grow something else. This is not wrong exactly. Water use must be reduced. But the burden should not fall only on farmers. And the solutions must involve them, must respect their knowledge, must not destroy livelihoods in the name of conservation. This requires dialogue, negotiation, fair compensation when farmers are asked to change practices or reduce production. It requires recognizing that farmers are not just users of water. They are stewards. And their stewardship, when supported, can benefit the entire system, can enhance water quality, can recharge aquifers, can provide the ecosystem services that everyone depends on. But this requires seeing farmers as partners, not problems, valuing their knowledge, including them in decision-making, and supporting them adequately. The taste of memory. Rice is nostalgia. The rice your mother made is the standard. The rice of your childhood home is comfort. When you are far away, displaced, living in a foreign place, the smell of rice cooking can bring tears, can transport you. It is not just food. It is memory, identity, belonging. This emotional power of rice is profound. It is why traditional varieties matter even when modern ones are more productive. Why people seek out specific types of rice even when they are expensive or hard to find. Why the loss of a variety is mourned not just for its genetic value but for its cultural meaning. The rice is connected to place, to family, to the rhythms of life. To lose it is to lose a piece of yourself. This is true for anyone whose culture is rice-based. But it is especially true for refugees and migrants. For people forced to leave their homes. Often one of the first things they seek in a new place is familiar rice. It is a way of maintaining connection, of keeping identity alive, of feeding not just the body but the soul. And finding that rice, or not finding it, can be significant, can affect well-being. This is why ethnic groceries, why import shops that bring in foods from home countries, are so important. They provide not just products but connection. They allow people to eat the foods that mean something to them, that carry memory and meaning, that make them feel, even briefly, at home. And rice connects generations. Grandparents teach grandchildren how to cook it, share stories about rice harvest in the old country, pass on preferences and techniques. This transmission is how culture survives displacement, how it adapts but persists. The second generation, the third, they may not speak the language fluently, may not know all the customs, but they eat the rice. They know how to cook it. And in that simple act, they maintain connection to ancestors and heritage. This is not trivial. It is how identity is sustained, How people remain rooted even when far from physical roots. The rice is a thread, thin but strong, connecting past to present, linking dispersed family members, creating continuity across time and space. And as long as the rice is there, as long as it can be cooked and eaten and shared, the culture endures. The future fields. What will rice look like in 50 years? In 100? Will it still be grown in flooded paddies? Will the varieties we know still exist? Will small farmers still tend fields by hand? Or will it all be mechanized, industrialized, homogenized? No one knows. The future is not determined. It is being shaped now by the choices made today, by what is invested in, what is valued, what is protected. If current trends continue, rice production will concentrate. Large operations using high-tech methods will dominate. Small farmers will be displaced. Diversity will shrink further. This is efficient in some ways, but it is also fragile, vulnerable, and it costs us culturally and ecologically. But another future is possible, one where diversity is maintained, where small and large operations coexist, where technology serves farmers rather than replacing them, where markets value sustainability and fairness, where consumers are connected to producers. This future requires intention, requires choosing it, requires policies that support it, investment in research that benefits small farmers, regulations that prevent the concentration of land and power, trade rules that are fair, education that values rural knowledge. This is not easier than the industrial path. In some ways it is harder, but it is better, more resilient, more just, more beautiful. And it is achievable if enough people want it. If enough people are willing to pay slightly more for rice that is grown sustainably, to support policies that protect farmers and land, to learn about and care about where their food comes from, the rice paddies could remain, the terraced hillsides, the mirror-like fields reflecting clouds and sky, the egrets stalking through shallow water, the dragonflies hovering, the farmers bent in planting posture, hands moving with practiced rhythm. These landscapes could continue. They are not relics of the past. They are functioning ecosystems. They produce food and beauty and biodiversity. They store carbon and water. They embody knowledge accumulated over centuries. They are worth preserving, not as museums, not frozen in time, but as living, working landscapes that evolve while maintaining core principles, that use new tools and knowledge while respecting old wisdom, that are productive and sustainable, that support dignified livelihoods for those who farm them. This is the future rice deserves. And it is the future we all depend on. Because if rice cannot be grown sustainably, if the systems collapse under environmental or economic pressure, billions go hungry. The stakes are that high. And the time to act is now. The gratitude practice. There is a practice in some traditions. Before eating, you pause. You acknowledge the food before you, where it came from, the effort it represents. You express gratitude, not to a deity necessarily, but to the web of life and labor that brought this food to you, the sun that grew it, the rain that watered it, the soil that nourished it, the farmer who planted and tended and harvested it, the miller, the transporter, the seller, the cook, all the hands that touch this food on its journey to you. This practice is not complicated. It takes only a moment. But it changes something. It interrupts the automaticity of eating, makes you present, mindful, grateful, and gratitude changes how you eat. You waste less. You savor more. You feel connected rather than isolated. This practice is ancient but needed now more than ever. In a world of abundance, of instant availability, of food as commodity, gratitude is countercultural. It resists the amnesia that industrial systems encourage. It remembers. It honors. It acknowledges dependence and relationship. And from that acknowledgement, different choices flow. You think twice before wasting. You choose differently when you understand the impacts. You support systems that align with your values. Gratitude is not passive. It is active. It has consequences. Political consequences, economic consequences. Because a grateful person is a conscious consumer, is a citizen who demands better, who votes and shops and lives in ways that honor the gifts received. For rice eaters, which is half the world, gratitude for rice is appropriate. This grain has sustained your ancestors for generations, has made your life possible. The nutrients in your body, the energy that powers your thoughts and actions, much of it comes from rice. You are, literally, made of rice. And rice is made of earth and water and sun. So you are made of these things too. You are not separate from the natural world. You are part of it, dependent on it. And acknowledging this is not weakness. It is truth. It is wisdom. It is the foundation of any sustainable way of living. Because only when you understand your dependence can you act with appropriate care. Can you protect what you depend on? Can you participate in systems that sustain rather than destroy? The passing of knowledge. In traditional rice-growing communities, knowledge passes from generation to generation through practice. You learn by watching, by doing, by making mistakes and being corrected, by osmosis, absorbing the thousand small details that make the difference between a good crop and a failed one. This transmission is informal but effective. It has preserved and refined techniques over millennia. But it is fragile. If a generation does not farm, the knowledge is lost. And increasingly, this is happening. Young people leave for cities. Elders die without passing on what they know. The living library burns. And when it is needed again, when someone does want to farm, they must start from scratch. Relearn through trial and error what was once common knowledge. This is a tragedy. Unnecessary and preventable. Some efforts are being made to preserve this knowledge. Documenting it. Recording interviews with elderly farmers. Creating databases and archives. This is valuable. But it is not sufficient. Because much of the knowledge is embodied. It is in the hands, in the timing, in the feel of when the soil is ready or the seedlings are strong enough. This cannot be fully captured in words or videos. It must be learned through practice. So the most important preservation is keeping farming alive. Keeping young people engaged. Creating pathways for them to learn from elders while both are still active. This requires making farming viable, worth choosing. And it requires cultural validation. Recognizing farming as skilled, important work. Not as fallback for those who could not succeed elsewhere. but as a calling, a profession, a contribution to society that deserves respect and support. In some places, this is happening. Young farmers are being trained. Apprenticeships are created. Knowledge is being passed on. These efforts are small, scattered, but they are keeping traditions alive, and they are adapting them. The young farmers bring new ideas. They combine old techniques with new understanding. They innovate while respecting tradition. This is how living knowledge works. It is not static. It evolves. But it remains rooted in place, in practice, in relationship with land and crop. This is the kind of knowledge that built and sustained rice civilizations. And it is the kind of knowledge needed now to meet the challenges of climate change, water scarcity, environmental degradation. The solutions will not come only from laboratories and universities. They will come from farmers, from people who work with rice daily, who observe and experiment and adapt, who carry both ancient wisdom and contemporary skill. Supporting these farmers, learning from them, amplifying their knowledge is crucial. They hold keys to the future. The reflection in water. The rice paddy is a mirror. It reflects sky, clouds, mountains, the farmer bent over in transplanting posture. This reflection is more than visual poetry. It is metaphor. The rice field shows us ourselves, our relationship with nature, our capacity for both creation and destruction. In the well-tended paddy, there is harmony, human intention and natural process working together. The result is abundance, beauty, sustainability. In the degraded field, the poisoned water, the exhausted soil, we see the consequences of exploitation, of taking without giving, of short-term thinking. The rice field does not lie. It shows clearly the effects of our choices. And what do we see when we look? That depends on what we are willing to see. Some look at rice fields and see only production, tons per hectare, profit margins, efficiency metrics. Others see ecosystems, cultural landscapes, living heritage. Both views have truth. But the latter is more complete. It sees the whole. And seeing the whole changes what you value, what you protect, what you fight for. The rice field is not just a factory for grain production. It is habitat. It is water storage. It is carbon sink. It is beauty. It is community workspace. It is cultural touchstone. It is all of these things simultaneously. And managing it only for one function, only for production, degrades all the others. This is the mistake of industrial agriculture. Treating complex systems as simple machines. Optimizing for one output while ignoring everything else. It works for a while. But ultimately it fails. Because the system cannot sustain the extraction, cannot continue to produce when everything else is sacrificed. The alternative is visible in the well-tended rice landscapes. The terraces that have been farmed for centuries and remain productive. The paddies that support not just rice but fish and ducks and countless wild species. The communities that remain intact, that have not been hollowed out by outmigration and despair. These places show what is possible when farming works with nature rather than against it. When profit is not the only consideration. When long-term health matters more than short-term gain. They are models. Not perfect. Facing challenges. but functioning, enduring, and worth learning from, worth supporting, worth fighting to maintain, because they hold answers. Not all answers, but some. And in a world facing food and environmental crises, we need every answer we can find. The silence of evening. The sun is setting. The rice field glows golden. The water, soon to be drained for harvest, is still. The workers have gone home. The birds are settling. There is a moment of perfect quiet. This is when the paddy is most beautiful. Not during the work. Not in the bright activity of day. But in this liminal time. Between day and night. Between growth and harvest. Between effort and rest. You stand at the field's edge and you feel something. Gratitude, perhaps. Or peace. Or simply presence. You are here. The rice is here. The earth continues its ancient rotations. And for this moment, all is well. This feeling, this moment, is what sustainability means at its deepest level. Not just continuing to produce, but continuing to feel this. To have moments of peace and beauty. To have landscapes that nourish not just the body but the spirit. To have work that connects you to something larger than yourself. To have a world worth living in. Worth passing on. This is what is at stake. Not just rice production measured in tons, but the whole web of meaning and beauty and relationship that rice cultivation has created over 10,000 years. The terrace mountains, the village festivals, the songs and stories, the taste of home, the satisfaction of hard work done well, the knowledge passed from parent to child, the connection to ancestors, all of it woven together into a way of life, into cultures, into civilizations, and all of it dependent on continuing to grow rice in ways that sustain the land and the people. Can it continue? That is the question. And the answer is being written now. In every decision about water policy, every choice in the supermarket, every young person deciding whether to farm, every government budget allocation, every research priority, every regulation written or not written. The future is not fixed. It is being made. And everyone participates. Not equally. Not with equal power. But everyone has some influence. Some agency. And collectively, the choices add up. They determine what kind of world we inhabit. What kind of world we leave. You cannot control the whole. But you can control your part. And your part matters. Because all the parts together make the whole. And the whole, right now, is in question. The rice paddies could vanish. The knowledge could die. The landscapes could be converted. Or they could continue. Could evolve. Could thrive. It depends. On us. On what we choose. On what we value. On what we are willing to work for. The dream of rice. Tonight, as you settle into rest, carry with you an image. A rice field at dawn. Mist rising from the water. The young plants, newly transplanted, standing in neat rows. The promise of growth. Of abundance. Of another season turning. This image has sustained billions. Has given hope when hope was scarce. Has represented life itself. The seed in the soil. The grain in the storehouse. The bowl on the table. The continuation of everything. Hold this image. Let it soothe you. Let it remind you that life persists. That humans and nature can work together. That beauty and productivity are not opposed. That there are ways of living that sustain rather than destroy. That your ancestors found those ways and lived them and passed them on. And that you are heir to that. Responsible for it. Capable of honoring it. The rice plant grows in water, roots in mud, reaching towards sun. It is ordinary and miraculous. Simple and complex. Ancient and contemporary. It feeds half the world. Has for millennia. And can continue. If we are wise. If we are careful. If we remember what matters and act accordingly. This is not someone else's responsibility. It is ours. Yours. Mine. Everyone who eats. Everyone who benefits from the systems built on rice. Everyone who inherits the knowledge and landscapes and cultures that rice created. We are all rice eaters in some sense. All dependent on the systems that produce food. All connected to the farmers and fields and waters that sustain us. And that connection creates obligation. To care. To protect. To ensure continuity. Not through grand gestures. Through daily choices. Through attention. Through gratitude. Through conscious participation in systems that nourish life. Sleep now. Rest deeply. Let the images of rice fields fill your dreams. The shimmer of water. The green of growing things. The golden of harvest. The patient work of planting. The satisfaction of eating. All of it flowing together. Past, present, future. Seed and grain and seed again. The cycle continuing. The life sustained. You are part of this. Your body built from these grains. Your life enabled by them. And tomorrow, when you wake, when you eat your morning rice or encounter it in some form, remember. Remember the 10,000 years. Remember the farmers. Remember the fields. Remember that this grain fed emperors and peasants, sustained philosophers and farmers, built cities and fed villages, and continues, because of countless small acts of care, of which yours can be one, of which yours already is, simply by paying attention, by caring, by choosing consciously, by participating in the great work of sustaining life. This is enough. This is everything. This is the quiet revolution. Bowl by bowl. Breath by breath. Moment by moment. The rice grows. The world turns. Life continues. And you are part of it. Have always been. Will always be. Until the final rest. The return to earth. The completion of the cycle. But not tonight. Tonight you sleep. You dream. You rest. And the rice fields wait. The water reflects the moon. The earth prepares for another season. Another planting. Another harvest. Another generation. The story continues. And you carry it forward. In your body. In your choices. In your care. Sleep now. The rice will be there in the morning. As it has always been. As it will always be. If we honor it. If we tend it. If we remember that this simple grain carries everything. Past and future. Memory and hope. Hunger and satisfaction. Work and rest. The whole beautiful, difficult, essential story of being human on this earth. growing food, eating together, passing on knowledge, sustaining life. One grain, one field, one season at a time.